This meeting is being recorded. So this is part one. This is exciting because we're about to start live building. We're going to start building a React application. It's live for those of you who are here now. It'll be recorded for those who watch later. And we're starting from scratch. So the idea is we want to build a project that meets specs within the curriculum, but we're also free and encouraged to branch out and do all kinds of other cool stuff. As long as we have project specs met, that really the sky's the limit as far as what we build. How complicated we get depends on how much time we have, whether our goal is to sort of get done as quickly as possible, or whether we want to build the world's newest and bestest app that anyone's ever seen. So those are the kind of guiding principles as far as like how deep are we going to get, how complicated. So let's set some goals today. And I'm going to go ahead and open up an Atom window here. I just have a folder to hold my project. It's going to hold the front end and the back end. And we can talk about whether we want to keep it two separate files or two separate directories or just one. Let's see, touch devlog. We'll just make it, I guess we'll make it a markdown file. Whoops. Rename that.
I don't see your screen.
Oh, you don't see my screen. Am I not sharing?
You are sharing.
I can definitely see the screen.
Yeah.
I'm shaking an editor back.
It's my problem. Okay.
It's a Sarah problem. It's not an everyone problem.
Yes.
I'm shaking my editor back and forth. Maybe you've lost your main. Click on one of those Zoom menus there. Maybe one that says back to meeting, possibly.
Okay. Sorry to bother.
That's okay. In fact, if I just do this, if I just stop share and then reshare, it might pop you back. We'll see if that pops you back automatically.
Not really, but let's
No.
see. No.
We can hear you just fine. I can see you. So there's something is working.
Yeah. Don't worry, I'm going to figure it out.
Okay, you keep working on it. Whoops.
Yeah.
So, whoop. Just want to get my chat open. As you all know, because I think you've all been in study groups with me before, please ask questions along the way if you have them. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. So what I have open right now is the portfolio project page. Okay, we celebrate a little bit because we've made it this far. Anytime I'm starting a project, I always want to make sure I have the requirements in mind. ES6, use create React app. This requirement, you should only have one HTML page. In other words, you're not going to be building a bunch of Rails views. You're not going to have alternate HTML that might render. We're going to load one HTML page, and it's going to have one div that React is controlling. These are at least two container components, at least 5 stateless components, at least 3 routes. We must use router for those routes, React router. We're going to use Redux to store state. And unlike like cat tinder and other things that we've demonstrated in the past, we're going to start with Redux, which is a much better way to do it. If you're going to use Redux, start with Redux and build your actions and your actions and reducers from scratch as you go, which makes life a lot easier. We're going to use Thunk, so we can send asynchronous requests, and we're going to use Fetch and build a Rails backend, for persistence. So we're going to be able to persist data. In fact, we're going to build full CRUD on something, at least some record within our backend. We're going to be careful with our serializers and think about what actions we need, what data we need to change, and when we need to change it. We are going to style this thing up a little bit to some extent. And of course, I should also keep my eye on the checklist. Once I'm finished, I'll make sure to go through this form, and I should be able to sort of think in my mind and talk out loud. Here's where I satisfied each requirement. Yes, I know I did it all the way down. Of course, we don't need to look at that today.
Hey, Howard, I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
On the, it said 3 routes and a few other kind of, sizing kind of constraints.
Mm-hmm. Those are, yep.
So I currently have an app that I've been working with for a little while that's considerably larger than that, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Can I make it a hybrid where 3 or 4 routes are React and the rest are just the way they were? Or is
what do you mean? What do you mean the way they were, like a Rails app or something?
Yeah.
For your final project, we want the whole thing to be React. In other words, we want all of the HTML to be rendered by React.
Okay, that's
so. Yeah. Now, That's how we're asking students in this curriculum to build their final project, because we want to see that students can do that. And that's one of our requirements. Now, that's not to say that you can't have an application or build an application, for example, a Rails application that has a bunch of views and that has certain sections that are controlled by React. That's entirely doable. And besides Rails, right? You can incorporate React, of course, in any number of web frameworks or ways of building your website where only one part of it are here and there, or even multiple. You could have 5 different sections of your application that are controlled by React, 5 different Redux stores even if you wanted to. That may or may not make sense within your application, but as far as the requirements for this project, we want you to use one React application with one Redux global store, and one Rails API that you can write to. You're welcome to draw in other APIs for GET requests as well if you want.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? First of all, I got everything set.
Awesome.
I wrote to you yesterday, and I'm wondering if that is a good idea. I know I'm going to be speaking with my coach, but I see that let's say for the cat Tinder, or when I looked at a sample that there was over there, I saw that they used something that you have tons of information on the internet about it. Cats or whatever it was, surfboards. My question is, does it make sense for an app to use something small, let's say for a family, to use photos or children or different things of,
absolutely. Of course.
That would also work for an API, for a Rails API?
Yes, as long as you have a resource that you build an API for and that you can write to. You can perform CRUD actions on. Absolutely. Yeah. It does not have to be some broad, tremendously wide-scaled, easily available, API-ridden topic. It can be something very specific, very small to you. It can be a family website where you share. Sure.
I saw somebody ask a question, isn't it like overdoing using React Redux for it and not Sinatra, for example?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's true. Like, what tool you use for your application depends on, first of all, what you know how to use.
Okay, yeah.
The old adage, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, that kind of thing. But if you know how to use Sinatra, you know how to use Rails, you know how to use React, which your students of this curriculum should be able to by now. You might make a decision that there's an application so small and so sort of very, very few moving parts, and Sinatra makes perfect sense. Likewise, Rails. But could you overdo an app by using React and Redux? Sure, but that's what we're going to ask you to do for your final project. Okay. Is it okay if you completely overdo a very simple application? Yeah, it's totally fine as long as you meet the requirements. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it's fun to build the same app in sort of 3 different frameworks and just kind of get a feel. Then that'll give you a good feel for what is it like to build it this way or that way using, you'll start to get an appreciation for tools that are available in one web framework that aren't available in another, or just even the different ways of doing them. Okay, so goals for today. Let's set some goals. Let's establish, I think I actually wrote this down. I'm just going to copy paste exactly what I put in the Slack channel yesterday, which is, whoops, oh no, that didn't work. There we go. Okay, so here's what we'd like to get done today. We'd like to establish a domain, an app idea, establish our user stories and our models and relationships, at least for starters. There it is, okay. Then we'd like to start building out our Rails app backend, at least the first round of it, including serializers. If we get through all that, we may get started on wireframing our app layout on the front end, and at least thinking about sort of the initial components that we'll start building. Maybe we'll bring in a wireframing tool to help us with that as well. And if we get through all that, we may actually fire off Create React App, maybe. And if we get through all that, we might establish our Redux store. I don't see us really getting this far today, but we'll see. It's possible. Very likely today will be focused on the back end, I think. It is possible, though. So these are some pretty good goals. And if not, of course, we'll do this in round two. And we'll be running these at a clip of at least 2 a week until we get a pretty decent application up and running. So any questions about the goals we have here today? Whoops, this is not supposed to be here.
Schedule-wise, you're going to be having it Tuesdays and Fridays?
I'm not sure that the days are going to be the same.
Morning hours?
And I don't have, this is probably hopefully I think this will be like the only time it's 9 a.m. on Eastern. I don't really expect to be running it this early very often. Okay. But each week I'll decide on Thursday or Friday what the next week looks like. Okay. But they all will be recorded, of course, and available. Okay. Cool. So here's where we are. And what do we want to build? So the sky's the limit. Does anyone have any ideas? And of course, if you have an idea for your final project, maybe we shouldn't be building that way. I'd like to stick with something that's kind of common, maybe something we've seen a lot of examples of, only because I don't want to build an app that a bunch of students would have really liked to have as their domain. It's not to say you couldn't do the same thing that we do here, but we certainly want you to build something unique, or at least unique to yourself. I don't know if that makes sense. But, any ideas? Anything on your mind?
Somebody mentioned a surfboard app. That sounds like fun.
Well, there's already in the student app, if you go to instruction.learn.co, there's already Kai's Surf Shop, which is exactly what this is, a live build series. I don't know how many videos there are on it. Let me pull it up real quick. But in other words, it would be a repeat if we did that. Let's
gotcha. Did you Jay Leno's Garage?
What about a to-do app?
Jay Leno's Garage. I kind of want to. I think let me just write these down. I'll say ideas. Jay Leno's Garage might be fun. Surfboard. This has been done in student app. And I don't think it's labeled as surfboards. I'm trying to think of what it's called. React. Maybe just Redux. I think it's still. Has anyone seen the Kai's Surf Shop series?
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay, so it's up there then.
Right.
I think it's just not called. It's just not called
Rails backend though.
Okay. I'd still rather somebody's mic is on. There we go. Thanks. I'd still, even if it doesn't have a backend, I'd still rather not duplicate something that's already in the student app.
How about? Sorry, because I have to.
Yeah, you've got an echo going on there, Julie.
Yes, because I have my phone too. Sorry, because I was on my phone and my computer too.
Yeah, just kill one of them.
How about something like Fresh Direct? Something like you can buy groceries online. I think something that's very popular. I don't know if that can be complicated.
So this would be kind of like we would have a service where
I can hear you. Okay. Sorry.
We'd have could you mute yourself there for a second?
Yes.
Cool, thank you. So we could have something where we'd have groceries, and then we'd have users who would have shopping carts, and they could sort of make purchases. Is that kind of the idea that you're thinking?
Yes.
And that could certainly work. We could do something like that. That sounds like it could get a little complicated, but doesn't mean we couldn't do that. This is the idea of having, so if we have a cart, we must have users. And of course, we probably will end up, I'm guessing, with auth on this application. It's not a requirement, but it's nice to have.
Another is renovation, like looking at the home and looking at different rooms, what has to be done, which contractors you need to get, which, etc.
So like a home renovation project management kind of tool?
Yeah.
That could be cool. I like these ideas. The surfboard app I'd love to do, but like I said, Luke's already done it, so I don't want to do that again. Jay Leno's garage. I feel like this would be kind of. I wonder what we would do as far as our own API. What would we be writing to? Would we be making comments on Jay's cars? I mean, I guess that could work. I think I'd rather have a little bit more of a robust domain that we'd be writing to though than like comments or something. Any other ideas out there?
Would something like restaurant reservations or something be complicated?
Would this be like restaurant reservations within the context of one restaurant, or would this be kind of like restaurant reservations across the board, kind of like an what do you call it? What are some of those?
Oh, like
Open table, is that what it's called?
yeah, I guess. Yeah.
And somebody mentioned the other day too a travel app, which is.
Yeah, I was just going to say like a travel scheduling app, maybe.
This a travel app, a trip app. This could be really that's something that I think we see a lot of and a lot of examples of that might. I kind of like this idea, to be honest, just because I think it's something we could, where destinations or something that we could have a table of that sort of lives on its own, and then we could have destinations that we've actually traveled to and comments on those kind of things. This feels to me like maybe one of the easier, lower hanging fruits to tackle. This one seems a lot of fun, but very complicated. Project management would be good though too. So I don't know. Do we have any votes? Let's see. There are 8 of you here right now.
Let's go with the travel. Should be fun.
I also think the home renovation one sounds like a good idea. That sounds pretty, like unique and interesting.
Okay, so I think I've got two votes for travel, 1 vote for home reno.
I'll go for travel.
I'll vote for travel.
I think that's 4 for travel, right?
Yeah. Could I ask? Can we do kind of a blend of home reno and travel, as in like plan your trip so you get that planning piece out of it?
That is, we could we? Yes, we certainly could do that. That sounds like 2 apps in one though, with more complexity than I might want to have for a final project demo like this. You have your projects upcoming and then you plan your trips around them based on how long you're going to take.
I don't know. I just like the planning piece. I think it's cool. But.
Yeah. Well, travel could certainly incorporate planning as well if we wanted to. I think I'm more inclined to just stick with one of these ideas rather than blending them though. I feel like it could get out of hand pretty quick in terms of complexity.
Then I guess we have a winner.
This travel app is something that for us to book a trip, or something that is and everything involved your trip, like a hotel reservation, car reservation, things to do. What that travel app would do.
So this is where our user story comes into play.
Okay.
So we need like an overview and user stories. I'll say user stories. User stories are, as a user, I can, or users should be able to, or would be able to. And so the answer to that question, we get to decide. So what does it mean to have? So if I think we're gonna stick with travel app, because that got 4, which is half of the audience plus somebody else voted for something else, which gives this, I think, the majority, if I did that right. Unless 3 other people want project management. And Sarah, yes, eventually I think user stories, I can transfer some of this into the README for sure. Right now I don't have a README. I'm just starting with a devlog. So I'll use this directory for both my Rails app and my React app. And I'll let those will both auto-generate READMEs for me. So for now, I'm just going to build our plans into our devlog, and I can always transfer this information somewhere else. So let's answer those questions. What's our overview? What should a user be able to? Do we want this to be, so I'll tell you what I was thinking, but then I'll let you all can twist it or change it however you like. I was thinking something like a travel and destination app where I can go and see travel destinations that users have put up and comments that they've made on those destinations. But I can also have, I could make, maybe I make wish lists, or even maybe I do plan trips. That could be like a stretch goal. And then I could also comment add destinations that aren't already there, and I can comment on those and put up my
I
sort
like
of
that.
reviews of those things. What do we think?
You could, you could also add, let's say you decide on a place that nobody had commented about. So you could also see, look for places to visit in that particular place.
Okay, yeah, so look for like places to visit within a destination.
Yeah.
Destinations. So look up for destinations, add destinations if they don't already exist.
Right.
We'll just say comments or reviews. I don't know which one we'll go for, maybe both. Destinations. And maybe even like comments could even be a little bit more complicated. Leave like things to do kind of thing. And this, we could either, so comment could be general, right? You could just make a comment on something.
Suggestions. It could be comments, suggestions, and reviews. Yeah.
Yeah, something. So we could decide if we want these to sort of be different models, or if we want to just wrap it all into one, or if we want to make them rateable, right? We could think about ratings, to-dos, things to do, ratings. Maybe could be something we could do. We could look for places to visit. Let's see.
Cost.
Maybe we could have costs listed somewhere. This feels like an attribute maybe of a destination, like a destination has some sort of cost rating maybe.
Yeah.
So users should be able to look up destinations, add destinations, leave comments. Do we want to try and think about planning trips? Like, is that something that this app should do for us, or is that, is that a stretch goal? Any thoughts on that?
It could be something like favorites or planned trips.
Okay.
How about airlines flying to that destination?
Okay, we could look up airlines. So here's airlines to that destination, and of course, what does this line right here sort of reeks of what? What, I shouldn't say reeks, like reek has a negative connotation, but it's this sort of like should a little light bulb should go off, like, wait a minute, there's something else going on here.
Fetch.
Yeah, well, fetch to what?
Oh, external API.
An external API. And this maybe isn't even the only one. Maybe we want to add destinations from an external API as well. I don't know. Maybe we establish our own destinations entirely as users.
Howard, can you build I mean, actually, I wouldn't say we could, but in the future, you could build a suggestion engine where, based on your past trips and your past ratings, you suggest future trips and future destinations and such.
This could totally be something really cool, and I think the complexity here might be a little much, but also really cool. So maybe this is a stretch feature.
Well, I would build a random number generator right now, but just as like fun thing to throw out there for.
Yeah. Sure, we could build a little logic that looks at our trips, looks at what the trips that we liked, and we would have to have some data around these destinations in terms of geography, price, things to do, that kind of thing, and try and match those against the things that we have listed. And to some extent, that means that we need to control our data a little bit tighter, but that could be a lot of fun. But I feel like it's a stretch feature, though. I really like this, though, as an idea. So we'll just say an overview is we will build a travel destinations app that lists destinations and allows users to add and I'll say edit, meaning like comment. I'll just say add destinations and comment, suggest, something like that. And let's see, anything else? Some stretch goals. Add trip planning functionality. And maybe add the suggestions. I like that a lot.
What would you suggest about adding pictures? Let's say somebody did visit this place and they want to add pictures. Is that
Sure. Pictures. So I think that belongs in user stories. I think a user should be able to, let's see. Okay, so I should actually do what I'm saying here. Users should be able to, and we should be finishing the sentence. Users should be able to look up destinations. Users should be able to add destinations, leave comments, leave things to do, add ratings. There we go. Users should be able to look for places to visit, should be able to see maybe relative costs, or some sort of relative cost of trips, destinations. Users should be able to have favorites, should be able to have planned trips. This might be a stretch. And then what you said, add pictures. I think this is important. I think users should be able to upload pictures. And we can talk about how we're going to handle that as well down the road. And users should be able to look up airlines to specific destinations. So it feels like we already have quite a bit going on here, which is good. So and honestly, like the fact that we have favorites, we have comments, there's no question it seems like that users are going to need to be able to sign up and log in. Now, this is not a requirement of the project, at least not currently. And it doesn't work exactly the same as it has in ways that we've learned in the curriculum. So this means that we will need sort of some sort of a supplementary lecture, something along those lines, which we will run in order to incorporate that. So somewhere along the lines, we'll have to do that, which I think would be fun. We can also mock this really easily with like a drop-down menu or something, or even just hard code a user. And I think that's probably what we'll do to start with. We'll hard code a user who's logged in, and from there we will we'll eventually add in the actual logging in, logging out functionality. Cool. I think we have a lot to start with here. So let's think about the models that we need. And let's see. Let me find my trying to find my website here that I use for, well, any questions right now? Any thoughts about what we've talked about so far? Here it is. Okay, so I think what I want to do, let's see if I can, I thought I already had this thing. Okay, so I'm using an application called Mockflow. Let me bring that over to where you can see it. There are tons of these types of wireframing tools out there. I am agnostic. I don't have anything that I'm going to tell you is the best or the worst. Here I have Cat Tinder. I'm going to make a new project here, which is going to be, let's see, something rather simple. Let's see. I like this kind of hand-drawn UI kind of thing. Okay, this is going to be travel app, React travel app. That'll be good enough to start with. Oh, okay, so I guess I have to build this within Cat Tinder. That's okay. It's because I'm cheap. So that's a major limitation of many of these wireframing tools is that you can only have one project running at any time. So we're just going to delete what we have here for Cat Tinder. Or maybe I'll just move it down to the bottom.
How did you get this Mockflow?
I just searched for wireframing tools, and it's one of the ones that came up, and I tried it for a few minutes, and I liked it enough to use it.
Okay. So you would recommend it for us on our project? Yeah,
I mean, so wireframing tools, and if we just do a Google search, there's going to be a bunch. There's probably going to be a blog post somewhere about like, here's the top 10 tools. And here's one right here for 2019, whatever. And you can see that there are a bunch. I've used a couple of these before. Let's see, which ones have I used? I've used Balsamic. I've had a very limited experience with Photoshop. Of course, you can use Photoshop. You can use paint. You can use a paper and pencil. But a lot of these are unfortunately are paid. And you can use them to mock up your website in its entirety. You can use it sort of as much or as little as you like. Right now, I'm just thinking about building relationships on our database. I'm trying to figure out how to delete these things. There we go. Can I just clear all? Is that possible? Sorry, I'm not a pro with this yet. There we go. So let's just delete these for now. Okay. And I could also do this in text. I don't have to do this as kind of like a UI like this. Because right now all I want to talk about is my models. But I think visual is good, so that's kind of why I'm taking a little time to do this. So let's see. I want. Yeah, where did that go? Let's see. So I guess, just trying to look through here. What do I have? I guess we'll just use a rectangle. There we go. Okay, so let's think about the models that we need, the models that we're going to use for this. Add a couple more. So what models come to mind when we talk about a travel destination app?
Location.
Okay, location. Oh goodness, that's a lot of text. A lot of label, maybe that's the better. Label, there we go. So location.
Destinations.
So what's are location and destination similar? Are they joined models? What's the relationship between
It's actually location should have a city, country.
It feels like a destination has a location.
Isn't a location an attribute of a destination?
Yeah, I don't know. We have to make that decision. These are decisions that we're kind of thinking about now, and they don't have to be final, right? We can if we decide down the road we want to change our mind, that's fine. I know we need a user model.
Attractions.
Attractions feels like I like attractions as a model for sure. And just because we think about these now doesn't mean we have to start with them all either. We can think of some of them as stretch goals or down the road. We can, and I think we should start on the simpler side, and we'll get more complicated as it seems to make sense to do so. Attraction is a model, so it feels like destination. So destination. So let's think about locations. If we think about what a location is, how specific do we want to be? Is that like a city, state, country? Is location include an address? I think address is probably
city, state, country.
I think city, state, country sounds good.
Makes sense. That's right.
And the reason that I kind of like keeping it as a separate model from a destination is because now a destination can belong to a location. And a location could have many destinations, right? So New York City, for example, New York, USA. Well, that might have a whole bunch of destinations, right? So I kind of like the idea of keeping them separate. So let's see. I need some more labels. So I'm going to break these up into attributes and relationships. So let's see. Attributes. and relationships. I'll label here too. I'm thinking in terms of speed, I might jump back to our text for now, and I can copy and paste stuff into these boxes for visual effect. Because I feel like this is slowing me down a little more than I wanted it to. So let's think about models, which are user, destination. Whoa, no. Location, and what did we say, attractions? I think either comment or suggestion. I'm not sure which one we want to go with there, or if we want both. What does a user need?
Name.
Like a username?
Username sounds good. Yeah, maybe a name as well. So name, oops. Name, username, password, right? Do we want email? Do we want any other information? Is this enough? I think that's enough for now. Destination. Oops, and we need relationships.
Howard, do we want the user's home city or home location?
Maybe, yeah. Oh, that's actually, I like that, because then a user can belong to a location as well. I think that makes sense. So this would be a relationship. And would we want to say has many or belongs to, or how do we feel that makes sense as far as the relationship between a user and location?
Well, I mean, the user would have destinations as well, I believe. So I guess, you know, it would have one location for a home, I think, and many destinations.
So has one or belongs to maybe like a home.
Yeah.
And home could be, I'm kind of like pseudo quoting this. Home could actually be like from the location class, right?
Correct.
Something like that. And then the other relationship you mentioned would be like has many locations through destinations, which we'll think about that here in just a minute when we add some more to our relationships. Oops, there we go.
Gotcha.
Let me try and make this. This might be easier if I capitalize these for now, so you can see what my actual models are. And then I'll translate this over to the more visually pleasing side of it. I can just type faster in here, which is why I'm doing this for now. So I've got user, destination, location, and attraction. Doubles. And then each of these is going to have attributes and relationships. If I do it this way too, you can actually see why I'm doing it this way. All right, I'm building this up in Markdown format, so it's a little bit more readable over here. So this would be a model as well. We'll just say comment for now. Okay, we know location, this. And this guy. Okay. Whoops, one more. Okay. So now we've got user, destination, location, attraction, and comment. We have 4 models so far. And let's think. So users, we've got name, username, password. So we'll say has many. Oh. Has many. Now, and here's where we have to think about, do we separate on time, right? Do we separate like past trips that we've taken? Do we destinations? Do we have many upcoming destinations? Do we just have destinations that then are either sort of have happened or haven't. You know, how do we want to think about this relationship? And I'm not saying that we have to answer all those questions right now, but those are thoughts. Definitely.
Perhaps a destination should have an attribute of whether the person was there already or not.
Well, in that case, we would need a join model to handle that, right? Because the destination, suppose that the Statue of Liberty is a destination, right? So 100 people could have that as one of their destinations. So that join model could carry that information as like it's a trip that's happened, or it's on the wish list.
Right.
You could designate that one way or the other. We know that a destination is going to belong to a location. We know a location is going to have city, state. This could be like state, province, region. We'll have to think about that, and country. Location has many destinations. Let's see. Attraction belongs to, let's give attractions must have a name. Must belong to destination. A comment is going to probably be a join because it's going to have some sort of content. And it's going to belong to a user and belong to a destination. If we step back, this is still kind of hard to read, isn't it? So maybe I'll, nope. No, that didn't work either. Just trying to make this a little bit more readable. A location should be bigger. There we go. That's one of the problems. That didn't really help, did it? Oh, that's weird. Trying to do too much too fast here. I guess that's not really helping when it's all caps. There we go. I don't know if that's any easier to read or not.
Howard, I have an idea for you. Let me know if you think it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have the traveler or the user. I forget what we're calling it.
Mm-hmm.
The user. We have the destination.
Mm-hmm.
We have the location.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a model for a trip.
Right, and so that's a great point. So how would we think about that?
Well, I think we need the trip to sit in between the destination and the user so that we can go many to many on that, because that's what we need.
I think I 100% agree with that, and I think that's a great point. And I'm glad you brought that up. So in other words, we have these destinations and users can like comment on them, but really they should only be commenting on destinations that they've been to. So a trip really maybe has a date as an attribute, or a date range maybe, and belongs to a user and belongs to a destination. So which is funny because that's the same that a comment would have, but that makes perfect sense now, because now user really has many trips and has many destinations through trips. I think this makes a lot more sense. Who said that, Chris? I think this makes more sense. And then we could also we could break even this relationship up a little bit more and think about trips have been established, right? We either are going to go or have gone on a trip. And we might even have like a wish list of some sort. So has many, we could either make favorites or wish list. So down the road, we could add another model to sort of tie in. If I planned a trip or I've gone on a trip, I have those destinations, but then I might also have like a bucket list or a wish list, which we could tie in somehow as well. And we could either tie that into the trip model itself, like a trip has been taken or it hasn't, or it's been planned or it hasn't been planned or something like that. That could be an attribute of a trip, or we could make a totally separate model. But I think that's a good point, Chris, 100%.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. What are we thinking so far? Do we think we have enough to get started on our back end here? I think we do. And we can start, we can start by, we don't have to start really complicated. We can start, and I don't recommend that you start by adding, like 20 attributes to one of your models right off the bat, because we can always reset our database and restructure it if needed. But I think having a database to start from and to think about from the get-go is a good idea. That's why we're starting with this first. Any questions about anything else that we have so far about these relationships, about these models? Maybe an attraction should have a description as well, I think. And I mean, we could also start to think about either locations or destinations owning like a price range or something like that, right? I don't know if we want to call it price range or what attribute would we call something signs, like is it $1 sign or is it $5 signs? And I'm gonna look for the restaurants that are like half $1 signs, like yes, I can go there. So I don't know what we would want to call that as far as the name of an attribute and whether that belongs to a destination or whether it belongs to a location. I think it belongs to a destination, because certainly even within one city, you could have quite a range of how expensive something is relative. And of course, this is subjective and it depends on who's talking about it, but it might be something we'd like. So maybe let's think about, are we ready to start a backend? Do we have enough information here? Are we missing any information? Is there anything anyone's like, no, we need to sort something else out before we start building this? Make that more readable. Okay, let's think about it. Let's do this. So I'm going to go to my. I'm in a master folder. You don't have to structure it this way. I just have one main whatchamacallit. I have one main folder right now. It's going to hold both my Rails and my React app. And I'm going to start off at least with them as two different repositories. And for the Rails side, I'm going to use Rails generators, of course. So I'm going to say Rails new. We'll say React travel app. I really shouldn't call it, I should just call it travel app backend. Travel app backend. Do we want to think of some like nifty name? Does anybody have a cool name to think of besides just travel app? Places like with a Z or something, or some I don't know. Anybody a logo or a marketing kind of person that thinks that has some great name that we could think of? Here and there.
I would just call it something traveler, but I don't know, that's not too slick.
Does traveler have two L's or one?
That I don't know.
Google. Tell us, Google. How do you spell traveler? All right, so this looks like one N. Sorry, one L. Traveler. I like traveler. World traveler? Distinguished traveler? Or just traveler? Let's stick with traveler.
The globetrotter.
Globetrotter. Globetrotter, I like. Globetrotter. Ooh, I think I like that. I don't know if we're breaking any, trademarks with the basketball team. But I think Globetrotter is a noun that's general enough we can take it.
Yeah, I think we're fine.
All right, so globetrotter backend. That's what our Rails app's going to be called. Oh no! And I did everything wrong there. I'm going to delete that right away because I didn't want to do that. I just created a Rails app which is way more than I need it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and actually let it finish and then just delete it. And I think, yeah, I'm just going to delete it. So what I forgot to do was add my flags. I want to add an API flag, and I want to add a no test framework flag. Actually, I'll leave that up to you. Would you all like to see some tests on this? Because we can certainly build some.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
All right, so then I'll leave the tests in for now then, but I'll kill the, actually I think I can just kill this for now. Okay, so whoops. Let's try that again. Okay, so now I'm going to say Rails new globetrotter backend, and I'm going to do -- API. And what this does is this actually builds a smaller Rails app without a lot of the front end power that Rails usually ships with. And so that just saves me a little bit of files that I would have otherwise deleted or ignored from the generator. So now it knows that it wants to be we know that we want this thing to be an API only. We're not going to deal with views. So while that's thinking, let's look at this again. We've got user, destination, location, attraction, comment, trip. I feel like we're taking a little bit of a big bite here, but I also think that I also kind of like what we have so far. So I'm okay with it for now. If it feels like it gets too complicated, we can simplify it a bit in the upcoming
Just wondering, we have the destination within the location, and the destination has attractions. It seems like here we could cut perhaps the destinations. I'm just wondering, because if I'm going to a certain city, I'm interested in the attractions of the city. So I don't care, if the particular destination, I think the location is, let's say I go to Vienna, Austria. So the attractions are A, B, C, D.
Right, so you're saying like a destination and an attraction here are too similar?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's even superfluous.
Yeah. So which do we like better? I don't disagree with that at all. Which do we like better?
I would remove the destination.
So attraction as opposed to destination?
I would keep attraction belonging to location, which location is a city or whatever, and destination seems to be superfluous.
I don't disagree with that at all, because I think like within one destination, like a destination and attraction kind of feel the same. And I kind of like the idea of simplifying things a little bit. So if we say attraction within a location, I'm okay with that. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. And that saves us a little bit. Where did we have destination? Oh, a lot. Okay, well, let's see. This should now be attraction. Attractions. This would comment belongs to attraction. We're commenting on attractions. We could also maybe comment on locations if we wanted to, but that's complexity we don't need to add just yet. Trip definitely then belongs to. So then, does a trip belong to a location, or does a trip belong to an attraction? Is it a join model between a user and a location, or a join model between a user and a specific attraction within that location?
It's a location, right?
That's kind of what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I also think location.
Yeah, and I feel like this then might even like has many attractions. Where did we go on this trip? I'm just going to put some question marks there for now because I'm not sure exactly how we want to do that. So trip belongs to a user and a location and has many attractions. Or do we just, a location we know has many attractions. I think somehow we're going to have to, so we might not call this attractions, we might call it something else, or we might have an attribute here. I'm not sure how that's going to work yet. We might have to sort of play with it a little bit to get a feel for what we need there. Okay, so let's look at our globetrotter backend. And we'll open it up. I guess I already had it open. Don't need two Atom windows here, so that's superfluous for sure. There we go. Okay, so then let's look at this thing and see what we have. I'm going to leave we'll just collapse these into one. And let's see. So this, what we should see here is very sort of not normal. We should recognize this. This is a Rails app. What steps do we need to take right off the bat in order to start working our way toward having something that will work for an API? Anyone know of any steps that we must have?
You need to fix your gem file and activate the forest gem.
Yes, very good. Who said that? Babs. Yes, 100%. So we're going to activate rack cores right there. Great. Oops, not going to delete it. We're going to activate it. There we go. I'm going to save that. I guess we could stick with bybug. We could use bybug. We could use pry-bybug. Am I echoing still with anyone else? Or am I the only one hearing an echo? Maybe I'm the only one, sorry. It's up to you. It's up to us whether we want bybug, pry-bybug, or pry. I'm okay with bybug. Doesn't really matter to me. I think we're going to want bcrypt eventually, at least. So I'm going to go ahead and make it available because we're going to want users, and we are going to want to be storing. We're still going to want to be storing hashed, salted passwords in our database.
I was going to ask about that. Are you keeping that validation logic in Rails, or can you also do it in React?
Oh, what a great question. Who was that? I'm sorry, who was that? Was that Babs?
Sorry, that was Babs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's $1 million question, and it's a sort of I could give all kinds of answers. The answer is yes and yes. We are still going to have logic on the back end, right? We're still going to use bcrypt to hash our passwords. We're still going to use the authenticate method, which is an active records method that allows us to use that requires we have bcrypt installed and allows us to hash our passwords. But as far as logging in and out goes, we can no longer use sessions, right? Sessions live in cookies, and if you're running on one server, a Rails server in our example here, then we have one server running. We have our session lives in our cookies, and that information is sent back and forth from our server to our front end. It's all on the same. It's on the same server. Once we bring in a React application, we can totally use sort of all the same tools, but the problem is that the session won't work properly, right? The session is so as soon as we refresh the page, we're going to be logged out, and sessions don't work the same way. Well, they do work the same way, but we're not running on the same server, so it wouldn't work. So we're going to have to take some extra steps. Is what I'm taking way too long to say in answer to your question. We're going to have to take some extra steps. We're going to have to bring in. We'll probably end up using JSON Web Tokens to make that happen, which is something that we'll have to run sort of a little side lecture on and get that going. We may or may not choose to use JBuilder. We have to decide. Another decision we need to make is how are we going to serialize our data. We don't have to decide that today. I'd like to sort of get started in that today. We could use JBuilder. We could use active model serializers. We could use a different serializer like FastJSON API. We could look at other ways that Rails will let us do it. It's kind of up to us what we want to do there. Does anyone have any preferences, things that you'd really love to do or hate to do? I'm okay kind of I'm okay with using AMS. It's not, I might rather use a different one. I might rather pick a different serializer. Again, that's not a decision we have to make right now. But it's something that we do need to have in mind. So let's think about our models. What models do we want? We know we want user. Actually, I should, I guess I could split the screen. Nope, I can't yet. So let's bring this back. And now I'm going to split the screen. Can everyone still see that? And by the way, if the text is ever too small, please let me know if you can't read what's going on here. Can everyone read this okay? The text in both the editor and the terminal is okay, size-wise?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's think about user. So I'm going to use now. Another question I have to decide is what kind of generator am I going to use? Am I going to go through the trouble? Am I going to use a scaffold generator? Am I going to use a resource generator? And it's kind of, again, up to us. Like, what do we want to do here? I'm okay actually with, let's look at what a scaffold gives us. I'll say user, which has a name, username, and we know this is going to have to end up being password digest if we're going to use bcrypt. Digest. Okay, let's see what happens. Let's see what a scaffold generator gives us. Way too much is what a scaffold generator gives us. But an API, though, it's not as big, like to me anyway, it's not as big a deal kind of as it was when we used scaffold generators when we were building a full Rails application. So let's look what we got. We got a migration file. That's normal, right? So if we look, let's just look at these one at a time real quick. There's our migration. That looks pretty good. Our model, that's exactly what we expect to see. App models user, right? That looks good. We do have our test stuff, which we're not going to look at just yet. We can think about that down the road if we want to write some tests. We do get resources user. So if we look in config routes, we do get resources users, all right? And then let's look at the controller that we get. And this part we would need to be picky about along with our routes file, because maybe I want all these, maybe I don't. But what we get is our classic before actions for setting our user. We get index, show, create, update, destroy, along with set user and user params, all sort of come with our generator. And because I use -- API, the only thing we're rendering for all these is JSON, which is exactly what I want. So I actually really kind of, I'm just going to say it, I kind of like the scaffold generator for an API, because a lot of this is exactly what I want. Now, I need to delete anything that I'm not going to allow users to do. For now, like, users should be able to update themselves, I imagine. They should be able to, somebody should be able to delete them, maybe. We obviously need to be able to create users. Whether we want an index of users or showing users, I don't know yet. Let's comment that out for now. Maybe we'll delete it down the road. And then our routes are going to change. So this, I know I'm going to change this. At least I think I am. So we looked at our controller, and we also got, of course, tests around the controller as well. So I actually like the scaffold generator much more on an API build than if I'm building a full Rails application. But I should still think about deleting and removing any resources and any controller actions that I don't plan to use, and not just have this code sitting here. But my strong params looks good. My set user makes sense. All the rest of this makes a lot of sense. My before action. So I like all this. Now, another thing that I need to change, or I should say something I need to change here, is my namespacing. So if I'm building an API, I really should incorporate namespacing into my routes, so it looks something like this. Or somebody who can help me out. Like, how would I do that? Basically, what I want to do is I want my API to be something like domain.com/API/v1/resource. Okay, right. And so in this case, if this is our, like, what are we calling this? Traveler.com API. I wonder, there must be a traveler.com. Now I'm really curious. Traveler.com. It's probably like a terrible, like, spam-ridden site.
I thought we were globetrotter.
Oh, globetrotter. Yeah, that's right. Let's see what that brings us. Thank you. See how easily I forget. Oh, of course. It's Siesendorf. Okay, I'm just kidding. I don't even speak German, so I'm not even going to bother translating that. Okay. So it looks like globetrotter.com is taken, but that's okay. anyway, this is the format I want for my API. And the idea is that we should specify that this maybe this application lives somewhere else and does something else, and we want this API namespacing for a couple of reasons. It tells everyone this is an API, right? Don't expect to see a website here that's serving HTML. Also, the version. Website versions, I should say, API versions can change dramatically, and so we want the ability to have a new namespacing around each version that we let loose around our API. So this is a good idea to incorporate this namespacing. So who can help me out? How do I make this work?
I've seen that done by wrapping the resources users with namespace API.
Mm-hmm. Like that?
Yeah, I think so. And it's just a guess, but I would guess that the V1 will be the same.
Like that?
I guess so.
Yeah, I think that's right. So let's see what that does. So now what changes do I need to make then? Like, for example, I could run Rails DB migrate so that I have my users. Do I want to do that yet? Yeah, why not? Let's run our migration file. Let's just create a user. So I'm going to drop into my seed file, app, oops, DB, not app, seeds. And let's just run a user.create, name, Nadia. What's your username, Nadia?
Nadia F.
Nadia F, okay. And password is password. Sorry, everyone's password is going to be password. So if I run my Rails DB seed, and then Rails C, should see it happened here. Unknown attribute password. Oh, I didn't use. All right, so I know I want this, so let's go ahead and do it. So I'm going to go ahead and what do I need to do here with my user model? Why am I getting this error? Anyone?
Do has secure password?
I need has secure password. So let's just start. I mean, there's no reason not to do this right off the bat. I know I want my users to have passwords. I know I want to use vcrypt to hash them. So let's go ahead and do that. And now when we run this back, whoops, should now work. And now I should be able to look and see my users. There she is. So let's go ahead and run our server. For now, we can run it on 3000 because I don't have a React app to conflict with it. So let's go to localhost 3000. It should say, yay, we're on Rails, if it actually runs. And it does. And a couple things I want to know. Hey, Rails, what are my current routes? And it looks like I do have a bunch. This is looking good. So let's look at our users index. So our users path looks like API v1 users. So let's fire that off. In fact, I'm just going to copy it straight from my routes that I know I have, just like this. Copy that, localhost 3000. What's going to happen here, guys? Is this going to work? Besides that I have an extra slash in there. Oh, server error. Okay, what happened? Anyone?
Have we built any controllers?
Well, we got one with our scaffold generator. We got a users controller.
Oh, we didn't ask for a JSON.
We got, oh crap, yeah, good call. Okay, so I commented this out entirely, whoops. There we go. So I did comment, okay, so let's see if that does the trick. So I commented out, what happened to my, what did I just do? No? Oh, there we go. So I did comment out my controller. I commented back in, and I still get the same error. Uninitialized constant API. What is going on there? Why am I getting that error? So I commented this back in. I definitely have my index. There it is. And I'll show you that if I go to, let's see what happens if I go to localhost 3000. /users. So notice that I get two different errors. I have no route matches, and I have an uninitialized constant API. Any thoughts on what's happening here?
Do you need to build out folders, the API and a version 1 folder, and move your controllers under those?
Okay, so in my controllers, a new folder called API, a new folder called v1, and then move my users controller. This is what you mean, right? And do I need application controller in there as well?
No.
Okay, so let's see what happens now. If I refresh this page, this is my API v1 users. Okay, so now I'm getting a different error. Unable to autoload constant API v1 users controller expected blah, 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 blah to define it.
Update your class to inherit the API.
Okay, so something like this.
Yes.
And there it is. So I just wanted to walk through that because a lot of people might see those errors. If we want to properly namespace, and actually, I'm so sorry, didn't even catch who was just talking. Was that Babs?
Yep.
Yeah, nice job, Babs, exactly. So I need to namespace my folders appropriately. So controllers, API, v1, then any controllers I have, namespace under that. Within, so I need to adjust my control folders. I need to name my class using API, using module namespacing, API : v1 : users controller. And then I can properly, along with this, I'm properly nesting my routes under my namespace, and now I have it working. This one will, the one without, oops, I guess I deleted it, or if I just try to go to /users, it will not work. It will still tell me that I have a route error because there is no route that matches. But if I properly now have everything set up, then this is what we should be doing with our APIs. We should be namespacing them underneath API and then the version or something along these lines. You can, if you'd rather it all be capitalized, you can do that. There's a configuration where we could change this to API this way, but that's a configuration we need to change, and it doesn't bother me that it's this way. If it doesn't bother anyone here, we're going to continue on. And here's Nadia. She's in there. She's our user. This is looking good. And notice that we didn't set any serializers. We've simply rendered JSON users. Okay. I could comment back in our show page if I wanted to. If I save that, and I could go and see the show page for just my single user, which will be a single object or a single hash rather than an array. But we didn't adjust our serializers at all. So we're sort of to that point where we should think about what serializer we want. Do we want to use AMS? Do we want to just let Rails use defaults? And let's just say we're not going to just do this, right? We need a serializer because we want to be able to protect the data coming back. If for whatever reason we wanted to show a user, I don't want to be returning the hashed password. I want to be able to very carefully control the information that each route is returning and under what circumstance. I also should be adding statuses as well. So if we look, let's look at our Rails server. We got a 200, and that's actually appropriate, right? Let's see what happens if I try to go somewhere else. What kind of so we got an active record not found. So we got a 404, and that's appropriate as well. But we should take better control as well of the errors that our API is sending back and the statuses that our API is sending back. So I should do something like render JSON user status, and we could use. I think I can just do that. Let's see what happens. Let's actually see. Yeah, I think I can. What was that on show? I think I can do that. Let's see. Let's see if we still get a 200 response. So there are a bunch of, and we can look. What we really should do is look up on our Rails guides and see, like, Rails has Rails API status codes. You shouldn't even need API here because we can return status codes with just about anything. List of Rails. So here we go. So let's see. Do we not have, is that not on Rails Guides somewhere? Let's look on Rails Guides. Looks like there's a number of blog posts that have listed them for us. But I would imagine, I'd like to see it just straight up in Rails Guides, but if not, that's okay. So what I'm looking for, just to be, because I don't think I've actually articulated it, I'm looking for a list of all of the helper methods that give us our status codes that we want. Yeah, okay, so obviously here's one with just the number. All right, so never mind, maybe the blog post, maybe a blog post around Rails will actually have what I want faster. Let's just see. So let's see what just GitHub gives us. Okay, so there you go. So it looks like somebody to last active to blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so anyway, these are the helper methods I'm talking about. Basically, if we want to just sort of, if we know the error, right? I know, for example, that it's a bad request or unauthorized, and I don't remember the number. Instead of looking it up, I can just use the Rails helpers. These are all just Rails helpers. So I could do like status forbidden. This doesn't make any sense, of course, but I save that and I go back to my show page, and I look now. I got a 403 forbidden status code, which doesn't make any sense, of course, because this should actually be 200 because I am actually showing my user. But I should be taking control of these and deciding exactly what my API returns. In other words, we really ought to add a little bit of logic in the case that we don't find a user. We should be very specific about what our API is returning. For now, we can let it fall to defaults, and as we build out, we'll add more functionality in that sense. Which kind of brings us to serializers. Like how do we want to serialize this data? And I mean, we can take a vote. Do we want to use AMS? Do we want to bring in some other external serializer, JBuilder? Any thoughts? Any preferences from the audience? Is everyone clear on what I'm even talking about? Does anybody have questions when I say we should use a serializer? Is anyone like, what? Why?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what are we serializing exactly?
Okay, so I'm glad somebody asked, because the idea, every time I'm rendering JSON, right, I am taking the information from the database around a particular resource. On the screen right now, we're looking at users, for example. And Rails will take this user, which is a Ruby object built from taking information in the database, translating into a Ruby object, right? That's what Active Record, our object relational mapper, does. And now I have a user with all the information. What information? Whatever was in the database, so whatever attributes as well as whatever relationships. Rendering JSON is just going to serialize that Ruby object into a JSON version of that Ruby object. And the question is, what we're serializing, or what we're determining, what information from the database do we actually want to expose as JSON in JSON format at these routes, right? Right now, everything's coming through. And this is just Rails default. Rails is just saying, oh, you didn't specify how you wanted this serialized, then I'm just going to give you every top level attribute. There they all are, right? So I'm getting, this matches my schema 100%. If I look at my schema somewhere, DB, schema, I can see my users. All 5 of these attributes are coming shining through. I probably don't want that, right? I probably don't necessarily, for example, want my password digest to come through. I may or may not want my created at and updated at, but what I should be doing is I should be whitelisting and only allowing through the attributes that I want. Further, I might want to specify relationships to come through this JSON data, and right now it's not going to happen. So for example, let's just actually kill this for a second because we didn't finish. All we have right now is user. So let's just add a couple more. So if we say Rails G scaffold location, this is a dangerous game I'm playing with scaffold because I'm running the risk of way more controller actions and routes than I want. So I'm going to need to go back. I'm debating right now whether I should even be using scaffold.
I would use resource, and then the only thing that you don't need from that is the views, right?
Well, the views no views are even generated, right? So if we look in app, we do have a, we do have a views folder, but we don't get, because I use the API tag, it's not generating the standard views for us, which is good, which is a good thing.
So
In
that
fact,
resource with the API can be used, and then it won't generate that one. I think everything else we need.
yeah, that's right. So let's actually do that. I like that. So I'm going to say resource RailsG resource location, which has city, state. Do we want to say state? Do we want to say province? Like, how do we want to say that? Because you know, we have to think about not just USA where we have states, but also other countries that have regions or provinces. Like, do we want to say state? And that'll just be implied that state means province or region if a country doesn't have states.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? Are we okay with this for now? City, state, country? Are we okay with the state being called state?
Yeah, just go ahead. It's fine.
Can you do like a state / province, or is that just?
Yeah, I mean, it gets a little unwieldy. We could say like state or region. we can't use a slash to answer your question directly. That won't work for our name.
Okay.
I think I'm okay.
It's going to be empty, and if you're in a country that doesn't have states, so you just don't fill it in.
Yeah, and so what we could do is we could keep it as state in the database, and then anything user facing, we can put. Maybe that's what you meant. Whoever said it. Yeah, whatever's user facing, we can make it say state / province / region, right? And we'll know that state, and we know that means, you know, region or whatever. So let's look at the difference. What was and wasn't generated. It actually looks pretty much the same, right? It looks like we got all the same stuff that we got with our scaffold, but I'll show you some of the differences. First of all, I didn't use namespacing, so I do need to do that. I need to move this into our V1, but notice that the controller, none of the routes are built for me. None of the controller actions are built for me. So I would have to build all these by hand.
Howard, sorry, just a quick question. When you run this generate resource, did you have to add the -- API in there too?
No. And notice that there are no views still. So the -- API initially will configure this entire Rails application to know that when I use further resources, or I should say further generators, that it's not going to include the views.
Okay.
So it's already going to do that for me. So that's nice. I should, though, move this into our API and then namespace it accordingly. Class API v1 locations controller, save that. So now it's in the right place. And then I can look at the routes as well. Config, routes. And I should really move this down as well. There we go. So now I've got my locations and my resources. And let's just think of how to show this really before we run out of time here this morning. Let's look at our models. Whoops. We could say that a user belongs to, are we okay with like belongs to home or home, should we say hometown, home location? What do we think?
I think hometown works.
Hometown. And that's going to be a class that's going to come from location. And we could just say belongs to, so we could just do belongs to location for now. And we could change, so here's what I'm thinking. I should talk about what I'm talking, I should talk out loud where I'm thinking like this. I'm thinking in my mind, like, do I want to be like this? So location has many users. And I think the answer is I want it to actually be a little more specific. I want to know that my hometown, which actually comes from the class location and has many users. So this would be residence. I think residence makes sense, right? Now I have to establish my foreign key as well, which I didn't do yet. So location has many residents, belongs to hometown, class name, location. I have to build a foreign key here of, let's see, a user's going to need a hometown ID, I guess. something like that. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to use aliasing, right? I'm trying to tell this thing that I want, I know that locations are going to come through like the trips that I make as well, right? So I'm going to have many trips and locations through trips. So I want to separate what my hometown is, which is also a location, from the trips that I take. And I might not have this aliasing set up just exactly right yet. Let's see, I know that I want, so on location, I have not run my migration yet, so I'm free to go in and adjust that migration. So let's add that. Database, actually this is not right, of course. This is definitely wrong. Has many residents. The user belongs to a hometown. Let's see, so let's think about this. I always have to think about aliasing. It sometimes bends my mind a little bit. Let's split this down as well. Look at our schema. So a user belongs to a hometown, which means that actually the user model is what's going to need some kind of a foreign key on it. So then this is where we need a hometown ID. So I'm going to need to Rails db create migration. Oops, that's not right. I'm trying to combine the old stuff with the new stuff. Rails G migration. Is it Rails G create migration? It's just Rails G migration, isn't it? Oh yeah, yeah. Rails G migration. Add hometown ID to user. Okay. So we want to add column. Users, hometown, ID, integer. There we go. So right, so belongs to hometown. Actually, I think that would have been right. Foreign key, foreign, because the foreign key, I'm saying on the other table, the foreign key that we're looking for is hometown ID. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we did that right. So let's run our migration. Rails db migrate. If we broke anything off the top of our bat here, okay. Let's check our schemas. Make sure our schema looks good. For location, city, state, country. For user, now has a hometown ID as an integer. That looks good. And now let's drop into our console, and let's create a location. Nadia, what's your hometown?
It's not, but you can say London.
London, okay. So we'll say city, London, country. Was that England? Or should I say Great Britain?
UK, Great Britain.
United Kingdom. Kingdom and state. So like what is there a region for London or is
it's London as well?
London, okay. Okay. And now that should have, I used create, right? So now let's say Nadia, user dot first. Nadia dot, let's first see if she has an empty hometown. Hometown. Okay. And let's see if London, location.first. And what I'm doing right now is demonstrating like these are the things you should be doing in your backend. We should always check and make sure that we have exactly what I want. Does London have any residents? And if this worked properly, residents should be an active record collection, and right now it should be empty. Okay, so I know I screwed something up. Ooh, I wonder if I need, so I think on my has many, I either need class name or I need source. I always forget which one. Let's try class name first. Class name, user. So I'm gonna save that first. Oops, exit this, run it back. And what I wanna know now, let's see, I'm gonna grab Nadia. I'm gonna grab London, location dot. Okay, and now let's see, London.residence. Okay, now we have a collection. That's looking good, but Nadia.hometown. Okay, so now let's update this. So let's say Nadia.update hometown of London. Okay, that seems to have worked. So let's see, Nadia.hometown London, there it is, and London.residence. Cross your fingers. There's Nadia. This is good news. Okay, so this is a little bit of aliasing where I'm not sure. I might not need this key value pair. I always forget which is which. I should be looking these up as I go because I always forget. Aliasing always confuses me a little bit in terms of, I always have to look up and remember. Somehow I managed to remember enough to get it working. I'm not sure if we need this, the key value pair here, or if this entire line on the has many side is enough. But this isn't hurting anything. I'm gonna leave it for now. And it's actually kind of more clear anyway, even if it were unnecessary, like, oh yeah, okay, I know that a hometown belongs to a location, or is actually a location. Everybody okay with this aliasing that we just did? It's a little aliasing on the back end. Does anyone not remember aliasing at all and you're just shrugging your shoulders like, what is that? Is everybody okay?
It's been a while, but
Right.
Howard, do you have a good reference for this material? Because I find I went looking for it one day and I couldn't find any good material on it.
So Rails guides, alias. I always go to Rails guides first for stuff like this. I don't want, there we go. It's definitely associations. And these are association basics, alias. Let's see. That doesn't look like it's helpful. Maybe I don't off the top of my head. Well, let's just forget Rails guides. How about active record? Record, alias. I know I've seen like Rails guides on this. I'm just trying to think of, actually, let's look in, I think I might've been on the right place for the first time. So let's go back to that. Rails guides, Rails associations, active record associations, I should say. Because this is all active record, which of course is a subset, not a subset, but it's a gem within Rails. Let's look for class name. Here we go. Okay, so this is like a self join. So this is, yeah, this is what we're looking for, I think. So polymorphic associations, choosing between has many through and belongs to. Polymorphic, you might have multiple relations within models, and that's kind of what we have going on here, right? Because we're going to end up where a user has many locations through destinations, but also belongs to a location, right? And that's kind of what we have going on here. It might not match this example exactly, but something similar is happening. And the example here, we also have a self joins, right? So never mind having two different classes, we actually have relationships within a single class. And that's where we can see that it looks like they're adding class name on both ends, which is what I did, along with specifying the foreign key. So I have to specify the foreign key on the has many side. And then I have to make sure that the foreign key actually is an attribute of the other class, or even in this case, it's the same class. So we need these foreign keys in the database as well. You can also use references. I like to just, for whatever reason, I like to use integer. You can also use references if you want. And I'm not going to describe exactly what the difference is because I just can't articulate it off the top of my head. But you have that option as well. So this is just, if you look at just Rails guides and I just searched for class underscore name, because I know that I know that that's one of the, I should say the key that I need. We could also look for source. I always forget what the difference is here between source and class name. Source option specifies the source association name for a has one through. So maybe we don't have a has one through right now. So that doesn't, I believe there's a different use case for source. Here we go. So the option specifies the source association for has many through. Okay, so if it's a has many through, then we might use source rather than class name. Something like that. But yeah, but this is just Rails guides searching for class name or source. For whatever reason, I guess they don't like list this as aliasing. They talk about polymorphic association. So we could also look for polymorphic. Polymorphic, which sounds cooler anyway, right? So that's where I would go to kind of read through this a little more carefully. Okay, we got it up and running. Is that sure thing? So we got it up and running at least in a simple way on our app. We have users and locations. So we still need to go back through, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and run the rest of the migrations that we have listed here, sort of off air, so to speak, because it's just a matter of adding more, of adding the models, making sure that the controllers are namespaced properly, and adding the relationships. So I'm not going to go past what we've done here, but I'm going to go ahead and add these so that when we meet again on Friday, the backend should at least be up and running, and we'll pick up with serializers. We will choose a serializer, and we will add the serialization that we want, at least for starters, and from there we can start looking at the front end. Any questions about what we've done today, where we're heading? Any questions at all about anything?
Howard, you created the kind of master folder, React Project Live Build May 2019.
Mm-hmm.
That's local. You haven't yet done the remote repository, have you?
Nope, I haven't built a remote at all. And I'm not going to build a master. I'm going to build two different remotes. I'm going to build, for now anyway, I'm going to build one for Rails and one for React. That's my plan. The other option, of course, would be to nest my front end inside of like a client or a front end folder somewhere in here, and then I could connect them via Foreman. We could do that as well. I like writing to them separately on GitHub. To me, it makes more sense to have a set of commits for my back end and a set of commits for my front end. You don't have to, if you want to have everything within one folder, that's okay as well.
Okay, so if you were going to now do the remote, create the remote repository, could you just kind of quickly go through how you do that?
That's something we can do sort of to wrap up for today. So let's do that. So I'm just going to go to my home GitHub. Just make sure that I'm not missing anything. I think we are a few minutes past time here. Let me just double check that I'm not missing a meeting. I might have to run. Okay, no, we're good. I'm in good shape. I got the unicorn, which is GitHub's. This is a server error, right? This is GitHub saying, sorry, we screwed up. For whatever reason, then if I reload it, it should come through, I think. There it is. So now I'm just going to go to my repositories, which will give me access to the new button. So I'm going to say new globetrotter backend. Whoa. Oops. I think I started typing a moment ago in the search for whatever reason, absent-mindedly. Okay, globetrotter backend. All right. I'm going to go ahead and click Create Repository. I don't want to initialize with a README or anything else because Rails already built all that for me. I'm going to create the repo. Once I have the repository, and part of Rails new, just to be clear about where this happened, part of Rails new, wherever that is up here, is Rails initializes an empty repository for me, which gives me the ability already to say git status. Okay, and it knows that I've made all these changes. Git remote -v, and there is no remote connected. Okay, so I do need to actually add all these changes, and this is actually crap. So I'm going to say I really should have been committing along the way. This is really bad, actually. So I'm going to say git. Well, whatever. This is a terrible thing to do. Commit more often than I just did. This was really bad example here. I wanted to commit more often here. I should be picking apart the changes that I made to my user, to my location, to my database, and committing those specifically. For now, I'm going to do a bad thing. Don't ever do this.
Can you scroll down? Because I can't see the bottom.
I'll just have to.
Or scroll up. Or...
There we go. So don't do this. This is bad, but I'm going to do it right now. And actually, I'm gonna grab my remote first. So where is it? And it's just this guy here. So first I'm going to add my origin. Just pasting in this line. Okay. If I try to paste these, like if I try to do this, for example, I'm gonna get an error. And I'll show you the error. Failed to push some refs to blah 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 blah. Source ref spec master doesn't match any. And what it's telling me is you don't have any staged or committed changes. So now I'm going to go ahead and add them. Initial commit. Add user model and location model. And that's just like, there's way too much. This should be like 10 commits at least. So this is bad. Don't ever do this. And now I should be able to run that last line, that guy there. Git push origin master. Dash U is this is the first time that we're doing it. We're setting this up. We're running defaults. And now I should be able to see my remote. There it is for both fetch and push. And my status should be up to date and clean. Git pull, that should be nothing to update. Good. So now if I go back and I refresh this, I should now have what looks like a Rails application pushed up to my repository. And there it is. Okay. And this should really be broken up, and I apologize for this terrible single commit for all this stuff. Single commit, obviously on the Rails generator, it makes sense, but then I should have been picking apart the updates I made, adding each model and adjusting the associations. But oh well, I didn't. Shame on me, don't make that mistake. Make sure you commit much more often than I just did. All right, cool. Any other questions?
Hi, this is Babs. You said the next follow-on session is Friday. Is that right?
Yep. Okay. Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, goody.
So that will be. Yeah, you don't have to wake up quite this early on Friday. I'm going to stop the recording. Maybe.
We Slack you for a copy of the video as usual.
Yep, I'm going to put. Why is this not letting me stop the recording? Uh-oh. This is recording, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Why is it not letting me stop? Oh, I have to stop my share first, maybe? That's weird. Stop recording.